Hi, coming back for part two of Muckle Chapter 8. And we are on to, we're still in sort of language and culture. We're going to do language next week, but for now we're talking about language and subsistence, basically eating bugs. So, what we're talking about when we're talking about bugs is food. And so, when we talk about food, we're talking about categories, basically. Categories of food versus not food. There's things that we see as food, and this is what we eat: hamburgers, pork chops, and then we see stuff as not food. So we've got two categories here: the food and the not food. And so we're going to say food typically is um, things that you can buy at the grocery store. So um, something like a cow, right? Cow is food. Um, and chicken is food. I was going to put chicken there, but chicken is food too, right? What is not food? Not food might be horse. Do we eat horses? I guess if you're not French, you don't eat horse. If you, yeah. Chicken, maybe, I don't know, like crow, right? And then there's pig. Pig is food. And then there's dog, of course, is food. And then people raise their hands and say, "What? Dogs aren't food." At which point I say, "What is the difference between a dog and a pig?" They say, "Well, dogs are intelligent." I say, "Pigs are intelligent." "Well, pigs eat everything, right? They eat their own poop." And I say, "Dogs do too." They say, "Well, dogs have personality. Pigs have personality." Lots of people have pet pigs. They say they're perfectly nice creatures. A dog is basically a pig with a different nose. What keeps it from being food? And actually, dog is much more delicately flavored than pig. Pig can be a little bit strong, but dog will never go wrong. Dog is a delicacy where I grew up. In any case, and then people sort of freak out, but that's always the fun part, is to talk about my experiences eating dog. But we're going to move on here. Um, Definitely something like a what is not food? Cockroaches, and then also things like shrimp. And people say, "Wait a minute, I love shrimp," and I'm like, "What is the difference between a shrimp and a cockroach?" Right? They're all bugs. It's just one of them is sanctioned, and it goes into the category of food because of your own cultural history. And you say, "Okay, it's okay to eat the bugs," but actually, I will tell you, the very same people that I grew up with in northern Ghana who eat dog and love it and think it's great wouldn't touch a shrimp. They think it's a bug that's got an exoskeleton, it's got those little grabby hands. Nobody's going to eat a shrimp. That's gross. And so here we can see that eating bugs is very similar. Um, and if we were in class, I would be feeding these to you. Unfortunately, we're not in class, so here I'm going to put the big screen up so you can see exactly what I got here. I got crickets. These are from Jungle Gyms. These are sour cream and onion. This is much better because the last time I had the crickets, they were salt and lime, and it was really hard to get them down. But these are sour cream and onion, so I'm looking forward to that. I took one out already and sealed it back up because I got other classes here. But you can see, hold on, let me hold it back that way, right in front of the camera. It is a cricket. It's got little feet. It's sort of sliding all over the place. Can you see that? Cricket. Down the hatch. Much better. Greatly improved. We've also got this is just for fun, but you know, here we go with the mealworms. These are cheddar cheese flavored um, larvettes, and it's all perfectly legal. Got nutrition label back here, nutrition facts. Um, Not recommended for people with a shellfish allergy, but otherwise we've got all the correct labeling for food legally sold in the United States. Here's what they look like out of the box. Got that exoskeleton. It's really just a shrimp, except littler and crispy. It kind of tastes like cheesy poofs. They're much lighter than the crickets. Have some chewy parts to them, but the mealworms are far better. And they say that if they grind up mealworms and turn them into chicken nuggets, you wouldn't be able to tell. Here's another one. And honestly, it's true. Chicken nuggets are made basically out of pink slime and chicken nugget flavoring and breading. And so we could probably be eating them right now and wouldn't even know the difference. And honestly, this is much more environmentally, sorry, I had three of them out, much more environmentally sustainable to eat mealworms instead of chicken. Beef is the worst, but chickens aren't really that much greater. Alrighty, got that out of the way. Goodness. You see why we watch the videos. You get to see all sorts of fun stuff. Okay, so eating bugs, you can buy these. They're really tasty and it's cheap protein. Think of them as shrimp. The culture concepts. What we're talking about here is culture. Culture is what tells us what's food and what's not food. Culture is shared understandings that shape and guide behavior, beliefs, customs, values, and knowledge. There's three parts to culture: what we think, what we do, and what we make. So culture involves cognition or thinking. It has to do with our attitudes and beliefs, what authorizes us to act in certain ways, what's good or what's bad or what's right or what's wrong, the best way to act or the best thing to do in this situation or that situation. That's all part of the cognition, but it's also the action itself. Culture is the actions that we take and the sanctions that we suffer if we break the rules. So it's not just what people think, it's also what people do. And then finally, it's the product, what we make, the things that we make, like the material culture from that we dig up in middens or on sites. Those are all cultural products, if they are indeed cultural. Flutes, bone flutes, or whatever. Four characteristics of culture. Culture is learned. It is not instinctive or innate. It has to be learned. The minimal definition of culture is that it is learned behavior. It's symbolic. It's based on meaningful signs that are arbitrary and that have to be interpreted. This is human culture, of course, we're talking about here when we're talking about much more heavily symbolic. Holistic. Culture is not easy to grasp in parts, and it's well understood only in the whole. And we can interpret this to mean lots of different majors or disciplines are required to answer any basic cultural question. Once you ask, where did that cultural value come from? And someone says, oh, that's part of our law. Then all of a sudden you're outside of sociology and you're into legal studies. Or, oh, no, that's economically necessary. Then we're outside of sociology and into economics. So we have to move around a lot. Sometimes we're historians, sometimes we're linguists, sometimes we're sociologists. A lot of times we are, but a lot of times we're biologists as well. Then it's shared, not individual. Cultural, pardon me, a little bit of cricket hind leg got back there in my throat. Crickets, buy them, eat them. They should be paying me money. It is shared. It is not individual. You cannot have your own culture. You have to share your culture with other people. Culture is community. Culture is shared systems of meaning. We share these systems and we understand them and we comprehend them and we interpret them. Community. Does community have to be physical proximity? Not necessarily. It has to be at least familiarity. For example, you're in community with Miami University at Hamilton students. All the other Hamilton students, I don't know, maybe there's 3,000 or 4,000 of them, are part of your community. So you're all familiar with the campus, even though you're not familiar with each other. Same as with your neighborhood. You may have neighbors you've never met, but you at least can recognize that they are your neighbor. If you meet them somewhere and they tell you where they're from, you'll say, oh, I know that neighborhood exactly. Your church members definitely share physical proximity, except right now, no, not in the current with our lockdown. Group. A group is people who share cultural knowledge, behavior, or products. So you have a lot in common with Ohioans, with Southwestern Ohioans, as distinct from Northeast Ohioans. Very strange people over there. Midwesterners, English-speaking Americans, white evangelicals for the white among you, black Mainline for the black mainlines among you, fans of Justin Bieber, etc. So we're all members of communities, and we're also all members of groups. And society. Society is a large group of people. You may not have much in common with an American of a different race, religion, or ethnicity, but you share enough with them that when you meet that person while traveling abroad, you feel like they're your people. If you've ever traveled abroad and you're hanging out with people from a different nationality all the time, and then all of a sudden you meet an American, even if they're as distant from you as possible from the other side of the country, you still feel close to them. And then community-based identity markers. These are subcultures, subgroups within a society made up of people connected by their similarities. Some people say that subcultures are sort of conventionally acceptable groups. You know, you can have subcultures that don't really defy the status quo. Skaters, model train enthusiasts, quilters, etc. Homogeneity versus heterogeneity. Oh, goodness, we're up over 11 minutes. We'll come back to this. I'm trying to keep them under 10. Okay.